So the recording has started. So I'm, of course, just okay. All right. So I'm going to wait till 7:01 by my laptop or my watch. There we go. Okay. Hi, everybody. We welcome to the July meeting of C2E2, the Climate Change, Energy, and Environment Commission. Very happy to have you. This meeting is being recorded. And this is a virtual only meeting, so hopefully nobody's with Lily in the conference room, except for Lily. Yeah, so if you can chat out, but if you want to use the little hand, ask a question, raise a hand feature, we'll try to follow that too. And I think with that, we'll go around the room and we have a few more people. Oh, we have 10 people. Is there anybody on the phone that I can't see who would like to make a public comment? Yes, Jamie? Yes, Jamie Michael, please go ahead.
Good evening. I just learned about this Climate Change, Energy, Environmental Commission last night. And I emailed. Unfortunately, Jenna Peabody was very quick to respond. So about it, I just wanted to introduce myself. I'm a clean energy engineer by training and trade who's been in the DC area for about 9.5 years working on clean energy and climate policy. I'm an Arlington resident in Colonial Village. It's a historic preserved on the county and the state lists. And I discovered this group because I was trying to see what support there is for EV charging infrastructure for a preserved area in a multifamily home. And I didn't, I'm really excited to learn more about this commission.
Welcome.
And participate. So I'm going to send an application after this call. I just wanted to say hello and introduce myself. That's all. No particular comment at the moment relating to that.
Oh, welcome. And we spent a lot of time at the last meeting where we talked about the transportation plan, talking about EV charging and investments in EV charging in Arlington's plans. So you might want to listen to the first part of the June meeting, which is posted on our site. But anyway, welcome. So I think we'll just take that as a kickoff of the introductions. So I'll start. I'm Cindy Lewin, chair since May. Mark, I'm going to call on people that I can see. Mark.
Mark Greenwood, Commissioner.
Doug.
I'm Doug Snellenboss. I'm a Commissioner.
Majdi.
Majdi Shamali, Commissioner.
Joan.
Joan McIntyre, Commissioner, Vice Chair.
And let's see, Elizabeth.
Elizabeth Whitney, Commissioner.
Joe.
Joe Trevette, Commissioner.
And I'm going to save our guest speakers to introduce themselves at the beginning. So I'm just looking at this list. Melissa. Melissa.
Hi, yeah, Melissa Ben, just interested citizen in this. Thank you.
Great, welcome. And as I said, is there anybody else besides our guest speakers before I turn it over to them? And I
was Jenna Peabody, Air Team.
Oh, Jenna, I'm sorry. There you are. I take you. Yes, my apologies.
Trevor
Jenna,
Martello, Commissioner.
Trevor, did I skip you too?
Yes.
I hate these little windows that trail off into nothingness. If you're not on my screen. Anyway, I apologize. I did want to also mention that although neither of them could be available for this meeting, we did receive a public comment from two, and it was circulated to you all earlier today, from two members of JFAC, the Joint Facilities Advisory Commission, expressing concerns, including environmental concerns about artificial turf and the various turf projects that are in that Arlington Public Schools are planning to invest in. And we will hear more about that probably at a future meeting. I think they would like to make a public comment later. So you have that. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Ty and Lily.
I think Michaela may have just joined.
Oh, Michaela, can you introduce yourself and welcome?
Yes, Michaela Milton, Commissioner.
Okay. And Karen Guevara is on too, I think from.
Oh, hi, Karen.
Hi, from Planning Commission.
Great, welcome. I know you're the Planning Commission liaison to C2E2, so we're glad to have you. So we have I know Rob and Eric are traveling and probably not able to. Eric's literally on a plane, so he's definitely not able to. And Rob probably isn't able to. And Jonathan, as Jenna mentioned, will be joining later. Okay, with that, Ty and Lily, please introduce yourselves and let's hear about the Gulf Stream latest updates. Because we did send, I think you all know we sent a letter about this project and really appreciate getting follow-up response.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So I'll get started. My name is Ty. I'm the project manager in the Department of Environmental Services for the Gulf Branch Resiliency Project. And we're very glad to be here to present. We only have 10 slides. And Michaela is a representative on the advisory committee for this project. And we've received great feedback and have incorporated as much feedback as we could into the project. But this is our first time coming here, so we're going to give an overview of the project and kind of give you a status on where we are. We're currently at 90% design for this project. It's going into construction next year, hopefully. 90% means we have solved and worked on a lot of the details of the project, but there's still a lot of very specific things we have to figure out as we move from 90 to 100% and final. So this is the map showing the overall extent of the project. There are 3 reaches. So the first reach, so I'll start there. The first reach is sort of in this area where there's an open field, there's the Glebe Road Park, there are tennis courts, and there's an eroding stream channel there. So we'll be repairing the channel, raising the stream bed, and allowing it to flow in a more natural way. There is a BMP, which is a best management practice, and this is for stormwater capture, and that's been added in the open field upstream of the stream project. Reach 2 is another section of the stream. With urban streams, they kind of start and then they get buried and then they reappear. So they're fed by outfalls. So Reach 2 is fed by an outfall. It's an eroding channel. It's a smaller stream. We decided to work on this stream. We don't have active infrastructure that's at risk. There's no roadway or sanitary line that's exposed there, but the stream is eroding because it's getting a lot of stormwater flow. So we will be doing some spot stabilization in that reach. The other section of the stream is Reach 3. It's next to a small park called Brohill Park. There's a staircase next to it that's eroding, and the stream has an exposed sanitary line. So we'll be burying the sanitary line and repairing the stream in that section. Those dark black things there are the stream structures that are used to control grade. And then the blue section is where we'll be doing some of the stream work. The main stem of Gulf Branch is also another section. Similar issue, sanitary line that's exposed, a lot of erosion on the stream channels. So we'll be working on that, raising the stream bed, improving the overall stream. And the green everywhere is where we will be doing planting, and it's also how we'll be accessing the sites. And then finally going down to Military Road, the culvert itself is undersized, so that will be another DES project where the culvert will be upgraded. As part of this project, potentially constructed around the same time. And then downstream of Military Road, we'll be also doing some stream repair. And then the rest of it downstream will be done. There will be some outfall repair, but that will be it. So this is the extent of the project. So why are we doing this project? You'll see a picture there to the right. That's where we have a sanitary line that's in the stream that's exposed, and there have been efforts to encase it with concrete, but over time there's been continued erosion. So it's a problem that needs a long-term solution. So we're looking to create stable stream channel to accommodate, increased urban flow in the streams. Also looking to protect and repair infrastructure such as the sewer lines in the streams. We're looking to reduce excess sediment and nutrient, and that's as a result of raising the stream bed, doing planting. There will be less exposed soil on the stream banks. Finally, we look to enhance habitat by having better water quality and less flow in the streams, more opportunities for habitat to survive, and water that would have more controlled flow. And finally, we'll have more access to the stream and potentially more education opportunities because it will be raised and there could be programming close to the stream. Finally, this project was identified in the Stormwater Master Plan completed in 2014. This is a visualization to the left of the screen is what things look like currently. There's exposed sanitary lines that have been encased with concrete, kind of working, but over time, the flow kind of finds a way under it, over it, around it. And then to the right is how things would look post-construction. So that's a rendering. So there will be planting, there won't be exposed stream beds, and the sanitary lines will be buried. So, Lily.
Yes. So Lily Whitesell, also Department of Environmental Services. And again, thank you to Michaela for being our advisory group representative, but also it was nice to see Joan at our rain garden workshop earlier this year. And Rob, I'm not sure if he's here, was one of our Green Community Tour site hosts earlier this year as well. So I appreciate everything that you guys all do. So here's an overview of our engagement process. We are here kind of at the 90% design. This project was identified as a high priority early on for all of the reasons that Ty mentioned back in the 2011-2014 timeframe. We've had a lot of engagement. We did a pre-design engagement to make sure that we were listening to community members before we even began design. And we've incorporated a lot of feedback. Again, as Ty mentioned, we're at 90% looking to go to construction next year. This slide, there's a lot going on this slide. I'm not going to read everything on it, but it is showing how all the different ways that we've incorporated feedback. There's also smaller things that are not even on here, but I just want to highlight a couple of the higher priority ones here for you all. One of the key things that we heard early on, it was right after or right around the July 2019 storm, very intense storm. So really heard a lot of interest in prioritizing stability with this increased storm intensity. Of course, this year it's been intense drought, but we're finally getting some rain, but also in the face of climate change and the things that are to come. So our primary goal is really, as Ty mentioned, to create that stable stream channel in the areas with the highest risks of inaction. There's families whose kids play in this stream, and nobody wants those sanitary sewer pipes exposed. Again, as Ty mentioned, another piece of feedback that we got that was key was addressing the erosion before it comes more severe, where you can address it with sort of a lighter touch. And so we added more of REACH 2 to the scope. We've heard a lot of interest throughout the project in controlling runoff upslope in the watershed. We've added 4 green streets, which is a lot for a small watershed like this. In terms of our overall program, but we also were able to add, we heard some additional interest in even more, and so we were able to add a regenerative stormwater conveyance to the scope. And of course, as other county properties redevelop over time, they will be required to add more stormwater facilities also. It's worth mentioning also that there are, 490 currently and growing individual private property stormwater management facilities as well. Another thing that we heard from the beginning it was to limit tree impacts, and that's something that's near and dear to our heart as well. We want to really limit the tree impacts as much as possible. We did a scope change early on in the project to completely take out a whole section of the stream that was downstream of Military Road. We've done a very careful tree prioritization. We did additional tree inventory this past spring and have incorporated that into the design. And we are also doing a very careful review after that inventory to make sure that we are catching everything that we can. And being very careful and thoughtful about, each of those different sections. And we'll talk more about that in a minute. And there was also interest in more stream monitoring to see what's actually happening in the stream. We have a long-term stream monitoring site downstream of Military Road that we've been doing for more than 10 years at this point. And we added stream monitoring last year. And so we have more than a full year of data at this point in the stream reach itself, where we are where we're going to be doing the work. And we'll continue to do our monitoring post-construction as well. So again, those are just some highlights. There's some other things that have been very important to certain groups or stakeholders along the way, and happy to talk about some of the other things on this slide too. As Ty mentioned, the culvert under Military Road is very undersized. We've had, there are some outfalls where the stormwater pipes end downstream of Military, where we've got, the end of the pipe actually snapping off and falling into the stream, and we'll be addressing those separately. Again, this is what that regenerative stormwater conveyance looks like. It will be dry when it's not raining, but this is what it'll look like when it does rain. It has amended soil. It allows water to soak into the soil below and filter through kind of a sand and mulch filter to slow down the runoff and also soak it in. It has 6 step pools along the way. So it's sort of like 6 cells where it is able to kind of capture that water even before it gets to the stream. And that the drainage area for that accepts water from parts of Madison Community Center. Moving right along, we've talked a lot about trees as part of this project. We've really worked very hard to limit any tree impacts, the tree impacts that we will have. As I mentioned, we've done an updated tree inventory. Through those tree inventories, we look at the size, the species, and the condition. So we really work those to make those construction access paths work around those highest priority trees. And one thing that Michaela had brought up last fall was, hey, can we look at, are there places where we could go through the stream in order to protect even more trees? And we were able to identify some key places where we've been able to do that to protect some additional trees. There's tree protection, native plant rescues that will be conducted. And of course, we are currently losing trees because of erosion. The trees are falling into the stream. So having that stability in the stream banks will help to prevent future erosion and future tree losses. New trees will grow. We have a robust and diverse replanting plan and invasive control and maintenance that Ty's going to talk about in a moment. So again, these are the planting estimates. One thing that I want you to pay attention to is the tree removals by size. So we've really designed those paths so that we can prioritize making sure to keep the larger trees. And sometimes you may have to adjust that path so you take out 2 of the smaller trees in order to save the larger trees. So that you'll see that reflected here. Most of our removals are in those smaller sizes. And of the ones that are larger, they are typically either in very poor health or condition, or they are in some of these extremely high priority areas with the highest risks of inaction, where we really have to be very careful about how we're grading and where there's sanitary infrastructure. So in some cases, you have to make sure to prioritize, go with the highest priority in each stream section. And we've broken that out by stream section. an area. And also, you know, by condition. So again, if we have the choice of, you know, choosing the location in an area where there's a tree that's in poor condition, we would choose that. And we've really worked to minimize any removals that are in that good condition. And again, most of those are the smaller trees. So in terms of the species, as many of you may already know, we do have sort of the early successional trees. Tulip trees tend to grow very quickly. But our oaks and hickories do tend to have higher habitat value. So that's also a consideration. Now, in terms of the replanting, we are going to be doing more than 150% of our replanting requirements. So we're going above and beyond what we're required to do, which is a pretty robust requirement already, and we're going above and beyond that. Here's again, you know, making sure to put the right plant and the right tree in the right place. We're looking at both the sun and the shade conditions, stream side, riparian forest, as well as, you know, sort of supplementary tree plantings as understory. And we've worked very closely with our parks and colleagues to and our colleagues in parks and natural resources in order to designate the high priority additional plantings as well. Ty.
Okay, and we are also designing with maintenance in mind. So, you know, the success of these projects definitely depends on how well the project is maintained in the long term. So going back to the goals, in order to ensure that the stream structures are in place and that we're meeting our goals for habitat improvement, there will be planting that is very intentional. And also we're going to plant densely to ensure that there's more success, and we'll plant larger trees so that it's easy to identify when they're not surviving, and also choosing plants that are climate tolerant that could some of the changes we're experiencing in this area. Additionally, we're going to make sure there's going to be watering for survival of the plants, deer shelters for the trees, and then there's going to be plant replacement under the warranty, and then supplemental planting post-warranty to ensure that even after the contractor is gone, there is a way to continue ensuring planting success. There will also be invasive. We're finding out how we'll be monitoring to ensure we're meeting our goals. So we'll be having some geolocated areas where we'll be looking at targets for invasive tree survival, and kind of having a numeric way to track that. As far as the actual stream structures, we'll be doing photo documentation to make sure that they are staying in place, and also that there isn't any erosion that is observed over time. And the way this will be evaluated, again, is through photos, but also looking at it after big storm events, just in case there's, you know, a big event that has an impact, especially at the initial stages as the planting is taking hold, and we want to make sure the project is successful. This is maintenance and monitoring, and yeah, Lily.
Back to me. So again, we've really appreciated everybody's engagement on this project. We have a fabulous advisory group made up of course, Michaela's on there, but also commission members, other commission members, civic association representatives, representatives from groups like Master Naturalists, Eco Action Arlington, and others. So we also, some of you may have seen, we did a live stakes planting in some of the areas that were outside of this project area, but we're still seeing some erosion and we did that in February, and may do it again. And again, we'll be doing some native plant rescues probably coming up this fall. So lots of ways to get involved. And of course, there's feedback form and other information on the project page. We'll probably be going to the public on our 90% engagement in September. So you can look for an upcoming feedback form with this updated information. We're still very, very new in our 90% phase here.
Well, thank you. Thank you to both Ty and Lily. That was I can see how much work has happened, how much progress, how much thought has gone into this, and we really appreciate it. I think before I open it for questions, Michaela, is there anything that you would like to add based on your involvement?
Sure. I really appreciate the work Lily and Ty have done, and there are some significant improvements which are much appreciated. The addition of more wood, fewer trees being removed, and the addition of RSC, all great. So much appreciated. The one thing I wasn't sure about is the monitoring, how often that takes place, exactly what is monitored, and whether boulders are also monitored when they are put in, that so we noticed quickly if they are moving
Yeah,
where they're supposed to be.
that's a great question. So project monitoring is actually, Ty, do you want to address that in terms of the project monitoring? So if boulders are moving, I mean, that's part of that stream structure monitoring. We like to say that we never really walk away from a project. We are always kind of out there. Oh, there was a big storm. Let's go see how it did. Things like that. We've been very pleased to see how a lot of our other stream projects have performed after large storms, including the July 2019 storm. There are a lot of other streams where there were exposed sanitary sewer pipes, and even really old projects from over 20 years ago, you may have one or two stones move, but those sanitary lines are not exposed. If you want to take a look at some of the kind of lessons learned from previous projects, actually, there's also a story map online. It's called Stream Resilience in Arlington. I'm happy to throw the link in the chat if that's helpful, or to email it to Jenna. But Ty, did you want to add anything to the stream structure monitoring question?
Yeah, so with the stream structures, with photos, you can obviously see some changes, especially if there's some damage or erosion happening. One thing that we're planning to add to this project that we haven't done in the past is actually do a survey. So once the project is done, there will be as-built surveys to document exactly where those structures are. But to actually go out and do additional surveys, maybe every 3 years or every 5 years, to see if the structures are staying in place. So this would be in addition to the photo documentation we do, where you actually can see a lot if there's erosion, which is what we want to prevent. That could be captured through photos. But sometimes, especially near the sanitary lines, we're considering adding another layer, which would be to actually go out and do a survey and see exactly where it is over time.
And in terms of nutrient monitoring, how often would that be conducted?
So we do some kind of very, very baseline, basic nitrate and phosphate monitoring as part of our regular stream monitoring, and that's 3 times a year. And so again, we've got data downstream of Military Road going back more than 10 years for that. And then we have also our upstream monitoring that we're doing currently. We are aware that there are some folks in the community who did some monitoring recently. What they found is, when we have dry weather sampling versus wet weather sampling, we have very different results, right? When it rains a lot, it brings a lot of stuff down and through, especially if it starts to eat away at the banks. So we've been doing some community group had done some dry weather monitoring, and so we're following up on some of the results that they found. They had found that, the sediment and phosphate, again, on dry weather days are very, very low. They did find a couple of nitrate levels that were a little bit higher than what you would want, especially in sort of the May and June timeframe when people might be fertilizing. But we're going out and following up on them. We found lower levels than what they had found in May and June here in July, and we'll continue to monitor, but nothing, hair on fire in terms of the level of monitoring there. But in terms of the nutrient crediting, again, the ask was to use site-specific site-specific samples for our nutrient credit reporting, and that's what we'll do.
Gotcha. And
Does that help?
you base that on the 3 times a year monitoring?
So the site-specific samples are actually based on soil samples, and that's the approved crediting process through,
DEQ.
through DEQ. But again, this project is not. We're not doing this project because of the nutrient credit requirement. That's not the primary driving force behind this project. This was a high priority project even before nutrient credit existed at all. And so, we'll follow the protocol and submit the paperwork, but ultimately the reasons why we're doing this project are different, which I think we've talked about.
Yeah, no, I get it.
Yeah.
Just the frequency of that and what exactly was in the plan.
Yeah. Yeah. So does that answer your question though?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions? I know. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Ty and Lily. Gulf Branch is probably my favorite park in all of Arlington. I've had so many wonderful experiences there through the years with my children and without them. People love to hike through there. I remember helping with a Boy Scout Eagle project there years ago, putting in some steps over a stream or something. Can't remember exactly, but and one of the really cool parts of Gulf Branch is that little pond next to the nature center, where in the spring you can have a gazillion little frogs and tadpoles and things. I hadn't heard you mention anything about that, so I'm guessing that it seems like that
stay.
that's in great shape and it's not in any danger and fairly healthy and like that.
Yes, we've gotten to know the pond very well. So you can see the wood frogs there in the spring, and they actually let it dry out in the summer on purpose so that fish don't start to populate there and then eat up all the wood frog eggs. So it is designed as a vernal pool. So so if you ever see it dry, that's on purpose. The Nature Center staff manage that very, very closely.
Okay, great. Well,
it is a lovely spot, though.
It's really neat, and I know that you're not supposed to take any of those little baby frogs out of there, and I'm sure no little boys would ever take frogs out of there and take them home to a little aquarium in their own house. So I'm just really glad to know that you guys are working so hard to keep Gulf Branch healthy and the stream going well. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thanks, Doug. Joan.
Yeah, just a little bit, kind of the managing the inflow of water, the stormwater runoff from, the adjoining properties. I mean, it sounds like you've looked for a lot of opportunities on public property to, capture that. Is that sufficient to deal with a very intense storm? What kind of engagement are you actually having with the kind of nearby neighbors to help them, install storm management areas in their own, and is there, is there a way that you can actually even manage the stormwater credits for the stormwater utility to really, because I mean, it doesn't help spending all this money if we still have a large amount of stormwater coming in that will undermine the work that's been done.
Well, so the idea with the stream project is that it will, be stable even in, these large flows. By smoothing that connection between the stream and the floodplain, you allow that water to kind of spread out over a larger area as opposed to scouring and really reshaping the channel. So the idea is that the stream project will take care of it, at least from the stability and the, protecting the sanitary lines and things like that. Even if we weren't able to do, the regenerative stormwater conveyance, the stormwater capture upslope and things like that. But yes, you bring up a great point. So we, as I mentioned, we do have, a whole array of private facilities. We do also have these public facilities as well. We've prioritized some of the, we've looked to capture get the best bang for our buck in terms of the green stormwater infrastructure that we're going to be putting in. So we're really targeting the places where we can capture the most stormwater and really kind of get the most out of those locations. And those actually will be going to construction this fall, the green streets. So that's great. With the regenerative stormwater conveyance, you mentioned building community support. And that's really a key part of this process. So we were, you may be aware that the area near the sanctuary HOA up near, Ty had mentioned Reach One up close to the Madison Community Center. It's under this covenant agreement with the local HOA. So we've really been, building that trust and building that relationship with them. And that's really what's been able to allow us to kind of move forward with that regenerative stormwater conveyance system. And we'll be, talking to them in a couple of weeks here as well. So we're actually talking to you before we've gone and talked to them, but we've talked to them previously and they were supportive. We've also worked with the nearby neighbors to identify places where we could plant some more trees. There's a sledding hill and we got to keep the sledding hill, but outside of those areas, there's been some openness to some additional tree planting too, which is great. I think on multiple sides of the stream, there have been some larger trees lost. So being able to recover that canopy in those sections, I think is really important. And also, as I mentioned, work with our parks colleagues to identify places where the tree canopy was a little bit sparser, and doing some supplemental plantings there in the park, but sort of tied together with this project. So does that answer your question, Joan?
Yeah, no, that's very helpful.
I know we're running over time. So
yeah. Just maybe one final question is, with the kind of relooking at it, how many additional trees were you able to save, and what's your kind of 10-year forecast for tree canopy coverage in the area compared to what it is now?
That is an excellent question. The 10-year tree canopy coverage in the area, you're looking for like a percentage, or so over those,
and especially comparison from between now and then.
Hold on one second. So I think, over a 10-year period, especially when we start out with larger trees, if you've been over to the recent Tributary B project area, those trees are already well above, well above our heads, and continuing to grow. I think we might have to get back to you on what we expect for a 10-year coverage area, but we certainly want to have good vegetation coverage throughout, and those are some of the metrics that we're going to be looking at that Ty talked about in our maintenance and monitoring plan. Does that help?
Great. Michaela?
Yeah, one more thing regarding tree survival. Joan's question kind of brought this to mind, is we've started requiring a 5-year instead of just a 2-year survival rate, because we found companies will come, they'll stick them in the ground in July, and then they come back a year later, replace the dead ones, and then they die.
Yeah, so, you had mentioned that when we were walking around. I'll bring it up, and I appreciate you reminding. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Ty and Lily. Appreciate all the information. Thanks for reaching out. And you're welcome to stay or go, and we will move on. But thank you for being here.
Thanks for having us.
With that, we will move to our next topic for something completely different, although the idea of what tree canopy will be in 10 years is sort of relevant. And that is, you guys, I sent this out last week, but you have this, hey, Jonathan, you have this county board, Libby in her final year has asked she's opened to all kinds of residents to participate in a visioning 2050, 26 years from now. What do we want? Essentially 25-year plan. What do we want Arlington to look like? And she's designed it as a postcard from the future, as you can see here. You're writing from the year 2050, you're writing back to the year 2024 to say, boy, it was really great that you did X back then, because now things are really great and I love it here. And so what is X? What are all the things that we can do during these 25 years that will get us to a 2050 that looks really like a wonderful place. What makes Arlington great, what's new, what's the same. And so we as a Arlington Commission have been specifically asked to submit something. And we will probably work on, this is a big vision piece that the county board plans to use for long-term strategic planning. But you'll see that what we've included so far in this draft is a lot of things we've already been talking about because that's what we know about. What I'd love to hear about in this conversation is people's ideas for further out, 10 years out, 15 years out, that will make Arlington great in 2025. And I want to thank Mark for submitting a lot of information on stormwater management, very relevant to what we're just discussing. And Joan has put some comments in, but why don't we start, Mark, with your talking? You sent your comments around, but do you want to say a few words about what the crux of them was? And then I think we'll bring, we don't meet in August for our guests. We don't meet in August every year. So we will bring back a real document in September and submit it, circulate it in advance so people can actually line edit. This one was more of a thought starter. So Mark, over to you.
I think Mark's on mute.
Mark, are you talking? Yeah, you're on mute. No, still can't hear you. So, no, maybe you should log out and log back in, or I don't know if Jenna can let you in. But
Let me
while
try.
you're,
Does this work? Does this work?
Yes.
Okay, I got it. Okay. What I just tried to do is for stormwater and then for extreme heat, give a couple ideas that have kind of been bouncing around in the discussion. One, of course, is the question of when we're talking about what it might be like in 2050, what is the result we'd like to see? And I think for stormwater, we have a natural goal, which is the 100-year storm and have protection against that. And in essence, there's a lot of work to be done to get there. And we need to think about a series of strategies to do that. So I've put some things in there about what you may be thinking about if you're focused on stormwater. And in some ways, the one on extreme heat is also very important and kind of to use some concepts that are under discussion in policy context about trying to make sure that homes can be protected, not relying necessarily on air conditioning alone. And because, we are looking at a scenario in which there will be a lot of storms. And when that happens, sometimes, as you know, the power goes out. So the idea of focusing on the issues of design, which can essentially make an interior space habitable, even if you don't have air conditioning. That's a huge issue. It's a design issue. And it seems if you're really shooting for kind of what's the best we can do, you do something like that. And there I just sort of tried to mention that green infrastructure is really important there, but you have to have gray infrastructure as well to really make it work. Sometimes it facilitates the green infrastructure and sometimes it serves valid purposes on its own. And I think it's important to find some way of capturing that if we can. Now, this can be written in a lot of different ways. It can be very brief. I don't know if we have a limit on how much we can say as part of this thing. Adam, is there a word limit here?
I think when Libby, I was wondering the same thing. I tried to keep it fairly short, but I knew it would grow. I wanted to grow with good ideas. I think Libby's concept of a postcard from the future, is a hint that, I don't want to treat us from the future. But I think that we as a commission, are playing by different rules. So I'm not feeling like we're bound to make it like a postcard. So I think we have flexibility.
Okay. But it can be written at different levels of specificity, but I think we can do something that's pretty targeted. But I think it's important to include those two things because there are parts of the county that don't think of stormwater and flooding, and certainly hot weather, as being related to climate change. And to make that connection, I think, is an important role that we should be trying to make clear, that you can't separate these things. They are, one is a cause, and one is a terrible effect and kills more people than most other forms of natural disasters. It's a reality.
Thank you, Mark. Other comments and thoughts about, what we have here. Hopefully everybody had a chance to skim through it, but talks about, we've gone all electric, we've done all these great things. And as a result, everybody wants to live here. So there are great jobs. So there's great tax revenue. So we can use that tax revenue to make all of these things even better, more parks, more all of that. It's a very rosy picture painted here. I know what Joan tried to do is sort of make it clear that the county, these things didn't just happen. The county specifically did things. Joe.
Two things. With this being, 26 years away, I think by then people will be comfortable with the word carbon tax.
Yeah, I wasn't. I thought about putting that in there.
So that is an option. And then the other one, I see it mentions about dramatically lowering private vehicle ownership. And then later it talks about how there will be a quote paved streets addition to some more greenery. And I'm wondering, it seems kind of contradictory if we're going to have dramatic lower vehicle ownership. Shouldn't we have abundance of streets be changed into more pedestrian access?
Yeah.
I think that was kind of the point I was trying to make is with a lot less vehicle traffic, we can have narrower roads, we can get rid of a lot of the parking, maybe blocks can even be closed off to traffic. If it doesn't come off that way, then we need to fix it.
We'll edit. Yeah, that's good. I see a hand, but I can't see whose hand it is. Do I do that by going to participant? Oh, Michaela.
Yes, I guess one addition I would like to see is that we have a dark sky ordinance.
That sounds good.
Our warm spectrum shining down, only used when necessary, the lowest amount needed.
Great. So then we would say that enhances wildlife, enhances bird, enhances the health of the ecosystem.
And human health. I mean, this blue light is tied to so many human health metrics. It's really not good for people either.
Okay, that's good to know. You mean
And
I'm
then
not
maybe even add to bird-friendly glass as well.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in that. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it's on our checklist, so we might as well throw it in. It doesn't take, to Mark's point, doesn't take more than a sentence to add bird-friendly glass and the dark sky. Other thoughts?
Yeah, C2E2 even wrote a white paper. I think Joan's the one that forwarded that to me. I hadn't seen it on dark sky ordinance. So
yeah,
great. So if we're looking ahead, trying to think about issues that we're just reading about now. I threw in something about a carbon capture facility, but I can't imagine that Arlington's building one here. The only one that's up and running that I know of right now is in Iceland. So, but trying to support, what are the things that we could do? I don't think it hurts to talk about the things we're asking them to do right now, because right now is when they're going to be reading these postcards from the future. But if we're trying to be a little more visionary, Michaela, do you have your hand up?
No, let's just remove that. It usually goes down automatically, but apparently it's not.
Yeah, sorry. So thoughts that are a little further out, or comments on what we already have, and Joan, I'll let you go through what you've added in a second, but comments on what you've already read or what you're reading right now. And Jenna, maybe you could scroll down to the next page.
Maybe make it a little larger for those of us with eyesight issues.
Or small screens. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a little better. Yeah, a lot of what I was doing was just kind of building and on, you know, kind of maybe pick a more general sense of where we're going to add into more detail, as well as get to the sense of what the county would be doing, as well as, and you know, what the balance is that, you know, kind of have to recognize that a lot of other things have to happen that are somewhat outside of the control of Arlington, whether it's the local government or individuals. So things like, you know, transforming the electric grid. I mean, we can do some things, but it's at the end of the day, it's going to be an effort outside. But, you know, you kind of have to recognize that some of these things have to happen as well.
Joan, not on that point, but you mentioned I'd put in the stuff about education because we just wrote that letter to APS about curriculum. But, you know, 25 years from now, those 10-year-olds who are learning that right now are going to be 35. And I hope that that is something that investing in education now will help make good, strong decisions, rational decisions, informed scientific decisions, just words we don't always hear these days. So, you know, that letter came from the Energy Committee, spearheaded by Doug. But I sort of think that that is something that's going, I hope, have a real impact in the future.
Yeah, no, I don't have a strong thing. Is you know, I'm focused as much of what we need to do has to happen in the next 5 years.
Yeah, so, that's true.
But
and maybe
yeah,
we should say that in the postcard that, hey, if you don't do this in the next 5 years, 25 years can't look like this.
Yeah, but again, you know, you're right. It will be important that we have, you know, a full constituency, that, you know, this is just embedded. People understand what's going on. They know what needs to be done. They know what's been done. You know, there's a much more greater understanding of environment, climate, and even natural resources and nature and that. So don't have a big issue with that. I'm just, I tend to focus in, you know, who's going to make these decisions pretty much right now in the next 5 to 10 years.
Right. Hopefully not our school children.
Yeah.
In that time period.
Well,
so, Jenna, maybe you should scroll down since people are probably reading.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the end. That's where we are.
Yeah,
so
yeah. And again, did try to beef up in terms of what do we get out of all this, so that, you know, it's not, this is what Arlington's looking like when we've accomplished all these things. And added in a little bit more on the in, you know, kind of actually the solid, you know, kind of consumption, and shifting away from, you know, a linear economy where we, you know, take, make, and dispose of, and more circular economy and how things change.
Other thoughts that we should try to work in, Doug?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I haven't studied the letter, but just thinking about this, I mean, by 2050, if we're still going to have a functioning society, we're going to have all vehicles are electric, and we've got photovoltaic cells on every roof that faces south and is not blocked by trees. So does the letter say that? Those two things?
I think it's been worked in some, and talk about batteries and microgrids for resiliency.
Right. And at the beginning where we talk about, in the first paragraph, we talk about that we've achieved full electrification. I know, Joan, you took out all public facilities are fully electric. So I don't know.
Yeah.
But I think that is important. But we talked about through a combination of rewards.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't use the word carbon. Well, we did. Joe,
I said they phased out fossil fuels.
Carbon. Yeah.
So it's by default, it has to be all electric.
Right.
Yeah, I think I was just trying to clarify because I think you were trying to make the distinction between what the county government does
and what the
rest
residents do.
of the,
Yeah. So first thing was about the county, and the second thing is
Yeah,
about
yeah.
how we got private people to do solar and do the
Right.
things you're talking about, Doug. But
Yeah.
we can clarify that more specifically.
Yeah. Good.
And Joe, you can see how I didn't say carbon tax. I said tax on negative carbon activity. I did chicken out. Absolutely.
In addition to the microgrids, thinking where we're headed really is that Arlington could essentially be one large virtual power plant in a sense. I think that's kind of where we're headed, and I'm wondering if mentioning virtual power plant is worth it.
Yeah.
I think it is. Absolutely. And what you mean, say a little bit more about that, the idea that we're all doing solar, we're all doing battery powered buses who are giant storage units, we're
And there's
integrated.
Yeah, it's all integrated demand response. The utilities are able to divert energy when there's demand in certain areas, and able to tap into battery storage of people's homes, for example, and pay them for it. A whole slew of things.
Yeah. I think that would be a great addition. Okay.
Community choice.
And Jonathan said something about consumer choice
CCA.
aggregation.
Yeah.
Jamie, I have to tell you the truth, which is that other than the public comment at the beginning, guests are not invited to speak during the discussion. But I will look at what you put in the chat.
Building codes are big.
Yeah, building codes are big, and we have a lot of limits in Virginia. You mentioned you were new about what we can do in our building codes under state law. But Jonathan, community choice
aggregation. Yeah. I guess if it's 25 years down the road, right? Like it's the sort of thing that it almost feels like it should say that in the second decade of or near, like moving into the third decade of community choice aggregation, which is kind of where a virtual power plant, if you're going to have a virtual power plant of the entirety of Arlington, it kind of would maybe have to long since been passed through community choice aggregation, because otherwise it just doesn't seem practical that one entity would control all of Arlington unless it is the government of Arlington and under a community choice aggregation plan.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is using that as the kind of, through community choice aggregation and other ability to choose power sources, Arlington, met its goal of a renewable energy by 2035.
Yeah. Right. We can weave that in.
Again,
I think that's really good.
The extent we want to use this to say, how did we get there, not just what the end result is.
Right.
I think that's a good way to do it.
So Joan and I will work on that. So just as a tail end to this discussion, so we've heard from a couple of county board members that they are planning to introduce a climate change resolution, and we don't know what is going to be in it. They don't know what's going to be in it either, but I think we'll want to give them some ideas. And you can see that the fact that the county, that they took these actions in 2019 to put these 2035 and 2050 goals has given us a real tool to, every letter we have says, you committed to doing this by 2035. So how does you got to vote this way on this to get to your goal that you picked. So I think that climate change resolution will be important. And I think but I don't know that there's a lot we can do right now. There's nothing for us to react to. I don't know that we don't really know what their vision is for it. So I don't know that we want to give them a whole list of things we'd like to see. I think we will be asked and have a chance to weigh in on it. But I'm hoping that the ideas in this postcard, triple postcard, or whatever it's going to turn out to be, will give them some ideas for that resolution. But that is out there, and I want to make sure we all know that that is coming in the fall. So any other thoughts on how we should play on the resolution? Jonathan?
I don't see any explicit references to energy equity, and maybe I missed it, but emphasizing that this transition has taken place explicitly ameliorating longstanding inequity, economic and social inequities in the county, vice neutral or worse, exacerbating those inequities. So
yeah, what should we be? So should we say through subsidies and?
I don't know that
I mean,
we have to.
Because to John's point, not just saying what happened, but what they did to make it happen. Because you're right, it's an issue we should be very sensitive to.
I don't know. I don't think that.
Okay, maybe we don't have
to.
No,
well, I don't think the term. I don't think saying subsidies is right. Like subsidies isn't going to solve kind of such a widespread issue. So I think subsidies can help relieve a burden in a temporary sense, but there have to be structural sort of incentives and such put in place and regulations in order to in order to impact those burdens and costs. And I think subsidies I don't think it captures the breadth of what is helpful and required. And also, I think it becomes a lightning rod because it sounds just like, oh, well, we're just going to pay people money as opposed to
government.
as opposed to a more comprehensive, broad-based solution that gets at the structural problems as opposed to just paying money in a moment to help someone pay their bill.
Okay, Joan, and then Mark, and then I think we have to move on.
Yeah, actually I was going to kind of build on what Jonathan was saying because I was thinking the same thing. And this is, we didn't really talk about environmental justice and equity. And maybe part of it is putting it in the sense of, we have capacity to welcome people of a diverse group of people at various income levels. I think there's, whether it's kind of partially through the SPRC process, focusing on building adaptive reuse and rather than, tearing down existing kind of market rate affordable housing and replacing it with the luxury apartments that continue to push people out, that, we should be looking into it a little bit in terms of how we actually weave all those things together and make sure. And this might something, other commissions might have ideas of how they fit in to thinking about this. And some of the equity issue actually comes into addressing what Mark was talking about earlier into terms of urban heat island impact and because, the areas that are most effective and its access to nature and things like that. So I think, thinking of how we work at it, we can weave that in.
Sounds good. Mark.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
I can.
Well, Joan actually was picking up on the point I was going to make, which is, I think what Jonathan's talking about is weaving in and really emphasizing the equity component to this. The safety issues here are absolutely equity issues, because it is certainly the case with the excessive heat issue. It's disproportionately allocated towards people who are in affordable housing and people who are aged. And that's the class of folks who are really being hit hard. And the notion of equity, broadly defined, is a very important principle, I think, to hit on all of these points with the noting safety and the availability of good energy.
Yeah, I think these all sound great, and I'm hoping, so I will undertake to do another draft with this feedback, and I'm hoping I can suck Joan in as well, and then we will circulate it. But this is these points that you guys are making about equity, which is one of our 3 sort of guiding principles. We do need to weave that in, and I like the safety angle. So any last comments before we move to the next topic? You will get another chance. So we will talk, the plan is to talk about this again in September and to hopefully send it in. I haven't seen other commissions sending in their postcards yet, and we've heard that we have a little bit of time. So just on that point. Okay. So the next thing on our list, which is really sort of based, next thing on our agenda, I should say, which is sort of based, I thought this discussion would help inform us, is our work plan for this year, which we settled on at the beginning of the year. We're halfway through the year, it's July. So how are we doing? And so I'm hoping that Jenna can pull it up, but it opens with these 3 priorities, one of which is climate justice and equity. Thank you, Jenna. And I don't think, we're halfway through the year, but I'm not suggesting that we really consider changing our objectives through the year, but comprehensive climate action, just remember what they are: comprehensive climate action, climate justice and equity, and this climate related resilience, which also goes to some of these safety issues that we're talking about and stormwater issues and how to prepare for giant storms. And it's great to see the county doing all of this work on that. But if we scroll down and look at our priority objectives, one of the biggest, decarbonizing buildings, and on that, working on the green building incentive plan. And I personally think that working on the green building incentive policy is probably the most important thing we can do this year, and maybe next year too, depending on how far it gets. And I know that Mark and Rob have agreed to be a work on it. And I was going to mention this later, but I was hoping David would be able to come. But David Evans has had to resign. He was one of our 3 people working on this because he's moving away. He's moving away in a couple of weeks. So, so that will feed into a later conversation. But this is something important. And I see Majdi, your name here. I don't know that this, I don't, that was at the beginning of the year. I know sort of after Demetra presented on the green building incentive policy, we had sort of this, anyway. So whoever wants to work on it and whoever is working on it, Mark, I know Rob isn't here tonight, but Mark, I appreciate what you're doing. But in any case, I think that is the most important thing. It's on here. And as we look to focus our efforts at the, throughout the year, I think that is something we should continue to focus on. As we go down on this first page, we see working on, Inflation Reduction Act incentives. We have been working with, I know Rob in particular has been sending a lot of federal grant opportunities, and I know Demetra and Jenna and the team are all over that as well. I think that's well on hand. The SPRC process we're actively participating on. It's not, as Mark can tell us, it's not moving as fast as it did last year. But it is a very, it is a huge way that we can have some input into decarbonizing buildings. Updating our checklist, that was something that we had on the, I think that is really important, but I don't think we can do that very well until we see what the green building incentive policy is going to be. But are there other thoughts on that? Oh, hi, Demetra. Didn't even see you. Okay.
If I could, and what I'm going to say is that I was supposed to do something that I haven't done.
Not yet, I don't think.
Well, one of the things I wanted to do was explain what's behind the curtain in terms of our checklist and explain how the formulas that lead to the scoring work. And I guess I will commit to writing up something that explains that for everybody, because I think even if the notion of waiting until the GBI reforms are in place and done is, we can do that, but we probably want to talk about the values that are underlying those formulas a bit. And I think folks will be somewhat surprised by how it works. And I can explain it. I can write a memo. I could, do it either way. But it's some stuff that we may want to look at and say, well, let's tinker with that. And maybe there'll be some improvements on that.
All right, let's put that on an upcoming agenda, hopefully September. Our checklist. I think it'd be really interesting to understand more about how it works.
Mm-hmm.
So looking at the work plan, I don't want to read it all to you all, but I do think, so CIP is one of the things, writing about the budget, advising on the budget. We did that for this year. Advising on CIP, we did that and had some noticeable impact, which we can talk about when we get to the updates. Green banks and financial mechanisms, we haven't really had an opportunity to pursue that. I know that's an issue of particular interest to some of us. I'm wondering if the climate change resolution is a chance to get some commitment that, we will put up a green bank or have some financing. You'll know, there is some talk in the Vision 2050 about financing and incentives being available, though it's not specific about green banks. So that is something that we can continue to work on. When we get to the next page, transport, decarbonized, we have talked a lot about EV chargers. Going back to green banks, Trevor, did I see your hand?
Yes, thanks. Just a quick comment on that. I mean, I'm happy to, to help lead the charge around the green banks and private financing as it relates to this. I think we've started to have some good discussions with Demetra and Rich and the team. And so there have been some interesting developments over the last few months in the way of, the governor's veto around a Virginia, statewide green bank, as well as some of the decisions made in Fairfax around their green bank. And so, there are a significant amount of Inflation Reduction Act funds available for the green banks. And so I'm personally spending time on this and would be happy to report back to the group as you'd like.
That would be great. And I would love to put your name by there. I already had your name in that category in my head, but it wasn't, when we did this plan in January, I don't think you were on the commission, so we didn't have your name down, but now it is. Jana will make that official. Mark, and thank you, Trevor. Mark, do you still have your hand up? Or
I'm sorry, no.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, so in terms of transport, we've spent a lot of time on buses. A number of people on this call have really, really, really worked hard and effectively on buses. Joan in particular. Joan, would you like to say something?
I'm just going to say on transportation, hopefully we're getting beyond the point of constant pushback, which we still get from on the issue of how many buses we'll actually need. But I think, letting that ride. But I think, the master transportation plan is up for renovation, and there's kind of certainly strong interest at the county board level, and we've expressed interest over the last year of actually rethinking our transit system. So, making it more responsive to a broader range of community needs for transportation. And so this is now over, and I think I saw the schedule is, this year within the next 6 months or so, I think they're going to be working on what the vision and goals are for the master transportation plan. So, we need to make sure that we're engaged in actually doing that, helping with that.
Right. Absolutely. And, part of why I'm zooming through this, partly to, partly to see if there's things that we shouldn't be focusing on, partly to add to our ability to focus on what we can focus on and what we can affect, but also so that's coming and we will want to work on it, but also to show that we've actually touched a lot of these things. We've pushed, we've moved, we've been active. And I know that, hello to Jonathan.
Hello, I thought you talked him into bed already.
Hi.
Yeah, apparently not entirely.
Nothing stays. Nothing stays. The world is always in transition. So bad, not bad. Anyway, it was interesting, as I've had coffee with everybody, virtual or real, and it's been really great to talk and hear everybody's ideas. But one of the questions that's been one of the excellent questions that's been asked is what is the impact that we're having? We send a letter, so what? And I think that's a fair question. And it was really interesting to talk to Susan Cunningham, who talked about how she reads our letters avidly. She is our liaison this year, and that she then takes it upon herself to she said, not every county board member does. Everybody has their own strengths, their own specialties, their own whatever, but they count on her to brief them, and that she absolutely does, and that they absolutely wait with bated breath to see what we're going to say, which was really great to hear. Now, the next question is, so then they all hear what we have to say. Do they change what they're doing? And we had that example recently. You guys may remember with the capital improvement plan, the 10-year investment plan. Joan testified, I testified, we had all talked about the fact that, oh my God, they're using our climate action fund that we got in the budget process and that we were so thrilled with. They're using it all on a resilience, this one resilience project at Lumber Run. And in that resilience plan, they're using half of it to pay for a gas generator for backup power. So we're taking our climate action fund money that we fought for and blowing it on a gas generator, which is exactly not what we wanted. And we complained about that. And, we had meetings ahead of the big CIP testimony day. Joan attended a number of work planning sessions, but we also met together with Susan, and we met with Takis and Matt to talk about that. And and we met, along with some of the advocacy groups, including Eco Action and some of the Sierra Club, some of the others. And they voted to, we got a note after it saying, yeah, we got everybody concerned. We think we can get this taken care of. We got that note from one of the county board members. As I said, Joan and I both testified. That wasn't all we testified on. We tried to take the bigger picture too. But we did win on that one thing. So now we have $3.5 million of climate change money that we can use for some of the things that we wanted to use it for. I don't know that will happen, but at least it's not being all blown on a gas generator. So, part of it is the public testimony, part of it is the letters, part of it is the behind the scenes meetings, I think. But I do think it makes a difference. And we don't know what to say in the behind the scenes meetings or the testimony. We don't have all the contributions from all of you. So I think it's worth doing what we're doing. So I'll get off my soapbox and see if anybody has anything to add to that.
Yeah, I think we do have an impact on a lot of, and we did the same on the solid waste master plan, zero waste plan. Even though they actually didn't change the plan all that much, they changed the resolution, which was going to replace the original zero waste resolution. And basically, the initial draft said, "Yeah, we're going to drop the zero waste plan, and we're done." Instead, they, made sure that it was going to be reviewed within 5 years. They highlighted the importance of the environmental climate impact and the need to focus on reduction and reuse strategies over just recycling. They specifically called out the construction and demolition debris, which had not been really mentioned. It was basically, we don't care about that. We don't monitor it. We don't. So, they worked in things that begin to be a starting point for the county to actually, kind of focus on some of these things that are not necessarily explicit in the zero waste plan itself. So again, county board members were interested in what we had to say.
So,
and I think it's going to be even more so in the future.
I hope so. So back to the work plan, I'm just going to skim through it. I think everything that's still left on, we have equity for our equity action for the year. Go back to what we were talking about. We really talk about just helping make sure that equity continues to be on people's agendas. So, there's countywide dialogue on what to do about it. So we're recognizing, to the point of the discussion we had earlier, that we're not sure what to do about it and how to get to those structural inequities, and other things have to happen. But I think that stays. And then there's a lot on watersheds, stormwater, and resilience to 100-year floods, which we have been working on and we've talked about already tonight. So I think, and then tree canopy coverage, urban heat island, a lot of these things, we are touching these things. And I'd like, hopefully we're making a difference. So I think the work plan, I've said I'd like to focus on the green building policy, green building incentive policy, but there's nothing in here that I think that, especially with Mark's addition, that I think we should change. But I did want to give people the sense both that this was a good work plan when we started, and that we are actually hacking away at it halfway through the year. So any other comments on, and thank you all for all the work you've done to do that. Any other comments on that? Joan?
Yeah, just kind of raise some of the, kind of upcoming things. There is the climate resolution, and that actually might be our opportunity to kind of lay out a lot of the consistent messages that we've had over the past 2 years or so, the whole of government approach, better focus on the private sector and helping, homeowners as well as building owners and businessmen, shift to, shift out of fossil fuels, reduce their energy consumption and all the things that's necessary to get to carbon neutrality. So I think, that could be a framework. It's not clear right now what that resolution is going to look like. Some of those resolutions tend to be really general and then direct the county to go come up with a plan. Frankly, we don't have time for a plan. And it's pretty clear what needs to be done. So it would be nice to have a climate resolution that's a little bit more directive on where the county should go. But again, it's our opportunity to lay a lot of these things out. I think it would closely match up with the vision that we're doing.
Right, I think so too.
Yeah. And then there's some specific things we might start, we've talked about like procurement policy. Barcroft, definitely. I think that gets at the equity. That's a huge opportunity, which, we're really not in the loop right now, so that something we kind of need to fix and because we're not even on their list of commissions to talk to. And they're both basically looking at minimum green building incentive policy. Even though I think actually affordable housing financing usually requires, something more stringent than what's on the green building incentive minimum.
Yeah, that's what I heard when I went to the mill. So I think through the SPRC process, but I think I agree. We've talked about getting somebody in. So Barcroft is a big affordable.
Yeah, I don't know this goes through the SPRC process,
but it's not on the list. So we've talked about getting them in September and reaching out to them to get on their list.
But I think this is an opportunity to say, county, and I know county board members are interested, is that this can be an example that instead of, kind of mumble jumble, nodding to sustainability, they actually make the point that this is going to be a first-rate sustainable building, and we're going to achieve, X, Y, and Z objectives that would, kind of get to, both energy efficiency, getting at the fossil fuels, but solar, community solar, microgrids. There's a whole lot of opportunities there.
So we'll follow up on that for the September meeting and follow, there are some other things, there are some other projects that are large, like River House, Arcroft, that will show up. So, but while we still have a quorum, I'd like to get to a couple of things that will need a vote. And the first one is the letter on deer management, the deer management plan, and Michaela has been participating in that and wrote the letter. So, Michaela, if you could walk us through that a little bit. Michaela still.
Sure. So as part of the FNRC, we were briefed by the county and kind of using that and also the documents on the Deer Project website. I drafted this letter. So I guess I see Joan went through and commented, and I basically find all the comments great, except for maybe the first one.
Preferentially. Yeah, I like the word preferentially.
Just to show
I wasn't
that
really objecting to it. It was just used twice in the same sentence, so I just thought it was overkill.
Oh, deers preferentially browse. No, it tells us more specifically what they preferentially.
Okay, I'm not,
use another word, but I like the idea behind it, that they're preferentially taking the native tree seedlings out.
Yeah.
So that changes the forest structure and
I mean,
reduces our regeneration capacity.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that last phrase could be, decimating our potential for regenerating native trees or something like that. If that, again, I was only really kind of focusing on using preferential twice in the same sentence.
Gotcha. Well, I can wordsmith that later.
Yeah,
but basically the county has funded several studies and they've indicated A, that the deer numbers are too high, and B, that vegetation is being impacted. So we're suggesting they move forward expeditiously with developing a deer management plan and changing the county code that would allow for sharpshooting and anything else they need to do to get this going. A couple other recommendations, such as monitoring yearly and focusing down on the real reason we're doing this, and that's vegetation recovery, not kind of diluting things with collecting other data. I think that kind of captures it. I don't know if there's any questions or suggestions.
Doug, I think you have a comment. And I just want to say that I did give Michaela some comments before. I saw an earlier draft, so.
Yeah, Michaela, as I'm looking at this, the first paragraph talks about deleterious effects on our forests. And then I'm looking at the fourth paragraph, the last sentence, say this level of damage is harming Arlington forests. And I just wondered if maybe we could also add, maybe in both those places, the deleterious effect of shrubs planted in people's yards, shrubs and flowers planted in people's yards. Forests are a little bit remote for people that don't get out into the forest very often, but the deer certainly do affect, yard plantings right up next to people's houses. And I wondered if maybe you could just add some phrase like that in both those places to emphasize the county-wide impact here, not just on our forests.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would kind of lump that in with other ancillary reasons for undertaking this effort, such as, I mean, they talked about monitoring diseases, vehicle crashes, and that's all well and good, but I think focusing in on the real reason we're doing it, which is the health of our forests, and not diluting it with all these other things, I think would be beneficial. So yes, deer are eating vegetation in people's yards, but that's not why we're doing it. So I guess I would not necessarily be in favor of adding that here, although there also is a possibility public comment. Everyone can send their own comments in addition to ours.
Yeah, it may be just something that talks about countywide impact without, I mean, the impact on the forest has countywide impact. The impact on wildlife has countywide impact. We can worry about that. But I think, assuming that the letter is pretty much as it is with potentially some reference to countywide impact. Are there any other comments, or are we ready? I really appreciate Michaela doing this. We're lucky. Again, Joan and I talked to Susan Cunningham, our liaison, and she was so excited to hear about Michaela's qualifications in this area, to have someone from national parks here, because Susan's point is deer don't really obey the boundaries. You know, we'll be working on these on a very regional basis, and to be working with, you know, National Park Service and other jurisdictions is great. She was hoping that, and we'll see if this will be possible, that Michaela herself could testify in this subject. So just to say that it is really great to have people on the commission with a variety of backgrounds and talents. So thanks to Michaela for her work on this. I know, just so you all know, I know that the county board is getting a lot of letters saying, you know, we love deer. We do love deer, and we don't want them all to starve to death. So I'm very supportive of this letter. And would entertain a motion to adopt it.
I move that we adopt it.
Michaela seconds. All in favor?
Yes.
Yes. Anybody opposed that I can't see? Okay, the letter is approved, and Michaela and Jenna, hopefully you can work together to get it out, and I can work with you if it's from me. So thank you very much for that. That has been a great process, and I really appreciate it. The other thing that we need a quorum to vote on is the June summary, which Jenna sent out earlier. And I sent Jenna some comments, looks like Joan did, but they're all very, are there any substantive comments? I didn't have any substantive comments.
Now, there was one area that looked like it was garbled. I think it should have, on the APS letter, I think the actual reference was APS standards of learning.
Okay, so we'll fix that.
Otherwise, there just was a lot of redundancy that I think between you and I.
Just a couple of paragraphs that popped up twice as Jenna considered where they fit best. So if there are no substantive changes, are we ready to approve this?
I move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor say aye, or raise your hand. Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, thank you so much for that. So the next, and thank you for both of those things. So the next issue that I want to talk about is recruitment of commissioners. As I mentioned, well, two things that have come up. One is that David is leaving, and I'm very sorry to see him go. And he wrote a very nice note about how much this being involved in this work has meant to him, which is really, great. And also the fact that we're just talking about Michaela, the fact that Michaela is so on this, so knowledgeable about this deer issue, how helpful this is. So as we look to recruit, and of course we have Amy on the phone who's looking to apply, and we do get regular applications from the public. But I think we should, and I sent out a sort of a matrix of skills that I'd like to see on the commission, and I hope, Jenna, that you'll be able to pull that up. But it may be very incomplete. We have some of these skills covered, and some we don't. One
second while I pull that up, Cindy.
Yeah, well, I'll just keep talking. One thing that I'm worried about is solid waste, and I had highlighted that just because Carrie Thompson, who had to resign, had some solid waste background and had been chairing the solid waste committee. I had that on this list as something that I wasn't aware that anybody had background in. And be careful before you raise your hand and say, oh, I do. because after that, we got a request that a member of this commission is usually looked to chair the solid waste committee. So currently, as I understand it, there isn't a chair, and the world has not ended nonetheless. But if you know anybody who has solids, and I don't know, and I know, Joan, you've made this point too. I don't know that we have to have the world's greatest expert on solid waste. We have staff who have a lot of expertise, but it would be nice. That's an area that, as we look at some of the skills that we're looking for, that's an area that I know I'm looking for. So some of the issues that I put in were affiliate, forestry, parks, wildlife. We've talked about the fact that we have someone who has some of that. Climate justice. I think some of us have some, I don't know that any of us would hold ourselves out as an expert in climate justice, but it's something we can reverse. Electric vehicles, we definitely have expertise in. Energy policy, renewables, electrification, we have a lot of expertise on this commission, and it seems to me, including the full energy committee of this commission. Green building development and construction, we participate in the SPRCs. Green building financing and green banks, I think with the addition of Trevor, we have some real strength there. Public education and outreach, do any of us consider ourselves, I think Jenna is an expert in that, but I don't know that any of us on the commission is. But I don't know, because we have staff with expertise, do we need expertise? Stormwater, I think we have. Sustainable residential housing, we have people, we have at least one person who works on that. Transportation, we have people who developed real expertise on buses. They didn't start with it. So I know it'd be easier if you were looking at this document, and when it comes up, you can. But are there other things? So that's the hard skill side, which was what I was trying to tackle. On the soft skill side, having somebody with history of community involvement or somebody who understands how Arlington works. And people who've just moved here, can learn that for sure. But having connections maybe with some community we don't have connections with, whether it's an equity community, diverse community, small business community, or other, and then helping the commission to look like Arlington County. All of those are sort of soft things. But with that said, so we had a vacancy. With David gone, we'll have another vacancy. I don't know that we always have to fill every position, but these are the, this is what I wanted to talk about. It is thoughts on what we should be looking for. All right, Jenna, I'm hoping you're going to get that. Do you want me to send-
I think it came from your other email. What is that email again? It wasn't C. Lewin at Verizon.
It wasn't? I think I sent it. It was attached to the thing that I sent with the agenda and this vision plan.
Okay, let me pull that. Here we go.
And I think, Joan, you as previous chair have spoken about having reached out to other nonprofits looking for recommendations and things like that. So here's what I started to do. Oops, we were so close. You had it for a second there.
Sorry about that.
Yikes. It may be a Word.
Yeah, it is a Word document right here.
Okay, so nobody breathe. But what other kinds of things should we be? Maybe you can scroll up a little and people can see the very bottom of it. The other way, sorry, down, scroll down. Yeah. Other things we should be looking for, and then we have a few minutes to talk about how we should look for them, recognizing that we may have people on the phone who presenting themselves for consideration, and we do have some applications that we've already received. So if we use this,
I think that's a good start, what you have.
Right, I
And
should thank Michaela, who screens tends to have a screening interview just with all of our applicants, which we really appreciate.
you know, this is something that I can definitely mention, the certain categories that we're looking for. So, you know, it's helpful to have this list and maybe even put that on the website, or I don't know how we recruit specifically, but to include that potentially on the
Website. Somebody who's better at Excel and Word and tables will have to clean it up before we put it on the website. But Doug, but thank you, Michaela.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would just observe, you know, building electrification is really the key to ameliorating climate change, and it's one of the things that we can try to encourage here in Arlington County. I certainly agree with you that you said the Green Building Incentive Program update is one of the most important things that this commission will be working on this year and maybe next year also. And I'm not aware of the backgrounds or skill sets of everybody on C2E2 or the EC, although I have a better idea on the EC. But I'm not sure that we really have a strength when it comes to penciling out the costs of building electrification for specific buildings, for example, and to compare those costs to the incentives that are being proposed by the current update of the Green Building Incentive Program. To me, that's that area is where the rubber meets the road. And I think if we had somebody who was really knowledgeable about building construction, costs of construction, costs of refitting and rehabbing buildings to make them more energy efficient and to, you know, retrofit heating and cooling and water heating systems. I think that'd be a real benefit to C2E2 and to the county overall.
Thank you, Doug. I've written that down and makes a lot of sense. Joan.
I'd just say something on some of the skill things is sometimes we can look for outside experts to come in to kind of brief us and give us information on some of these things. So, you know, having deep expertise on everything, you know, is probably not realistic to start with. The other thing that, you know, kind of keeping in mind, it helps to have some people that tend to have broad background and understanding. I mean, that's kind of where I see myself fitting in, is I at least know a little bit about everything, but I tend to think big picture and how different things fit together. And that's, you know, and also, you know, just the public involvement, or, you know, people that are engaged in the public, both because you know that they're civic minded, and, you know, that's where I learned most of my information, was working with Eco Action Arlington and other environmental groups and master gardeners and that. So, and plus just reading on my own. So, you know, again, and that some of that comes out when you talk to people in the interviews, to kind of get a sense of, you know, how they see themselves fitting in.
Joan, I just have to say that I think you're really underselling your level of technical expertise, but your point that you learned it, not because you started with it, but because you delved deeply into it, is well taken, you know, so people don't have, and, you know, I'm not sure I could, yeah, sometimes, right. You know, when I look at this list, I'm not sure exactly how I could, you know, we all bring different skills and different opportunities. So take a look at this, email me if there are other things you think you want to put on, and other things you think, Mark.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt there. I wanted to pick up on what Joan was saying here, though, which I think is important. We have this list, and I think you're thinking of it as, we need to get a person who has a pre-existing knowledge base that fits into these categories. And I think that's a good thing. And I think you should be thinking that way in terms of what you're looking for as a recruit in a sense. But I think there's also, to pick up on what Joan's saying, at some point, all of us probably have something we'd like to learn more about. And if you find people, look on a list that might be longer than this, I don't know, of the kinds of expertise that would be valuable to have, you might find some volunteers who are willing to devote some time to do it. I'm spending a lot of time these days reading about the heat island effects and the whole issue of excess heat and what it does and how it works and how you talk about the performance of buildings and some things like that. Now, did I know anything about this 6 months ago? No. But I've devoted some time to it because I'm beginning to feel that it's one of the most fundamental issues that we're not paying as much attention to as we should. And there are probably other people on the existing C2E2 who are doing some of that too, maybe. And so some of this might be just topics that we may want folks to invest some time in. That's all.
Yeah, I think that's great. I know, for example, that Joe invested some time in looking at transportation, without in the CLP context. And I think that's absolutely great. So I think all these are good points. Elizabeth. Elizabeth, do you have your hand up? You might be on mute. I can't see you. Yes, you are on mute. Well, Elizabeth, we'll come back to you. Okay. I just can't unmute, right? Or Elizabeth, feel free to put them in chat too, and we can all see them.
Sandy, this is Michaela. I'm not sure whether you can, but maybe including a caveat at the top of this that we're looking for people not just to have these skills, but who are willing to dive in and develop them.
Right, willing to learn them.
It's helpful to have existing, but that wouldn't exclude somebody if they're willing to dive in and learn in the areas that we're looking to fulfill.
Right, I think that's a great idea. And I think we probably shouldn't put this matrix up on the website, but maybe we could just put a sentence that says some of the skills we're particularly interested in, but not to the exclusion of others or something.
Right, I mean, maybe, do we have it? Yes, no, potentially. Yeah, maybe not the matrix, but some kind of indication of what we're looking for. Because we do occasionally get applicants that are nowhere near the ballpark, and it would be nice to just head them off directly.
Right. And if somebody knows somebody who has a solid waste background or might be particularly interested or valuable or willing to dive in and learn, I would love to hear about it. And if you would like to chair the solid waste committee, I would really, really love to hear from you. Right, here's Elizabeth's chat. Yes. Right, not just legal, but yeah. Right, and communication outreach. Those are great thoughts, Elizabeth. Thank you. Joe.
I would actually advocate for the publication of a matrix like this. I think it's very helpful, even internally in the commission, but also externally, and for people who want to apply and want to get involved or want to listen in. You're seeing this a lot in just ESG and sustainability disclosures for board of directors now in the Fortune 500s, is that they post all of the expertise of all the members and do a matrix like this. So I think it could be helpful.
Good to hear. Okay, other thoughts? I think that's it on that. So thank you for that. And please be thinking about who you know. I really think as Michaela says, some of the people who apply really miss the mark, and it is left in her capable hands to figure out how to deal with that. And so if there's always the issue if you know people and we're just inviting people that we know, that we end up with just people who look exactly like us. But if you know of groups, organizations, or if you know of somebody who you think would be really good, I think I would love to hear it. I think that's a great way to find people. It doesn't just have to be about people who just happen to look and happen to stumble on us. Although, a lot of us found this commission just that way. So I'm not opposed to that, but it doesn't have to be the only way. Okay, it's 8:49 and we are on schedule. In terms of updates, I think I basically gave the CIP update, but I particularly want to thank Joan, who chaired last month, and who also did a lot of work on CIP, including writing the letter, but also everybody else who contributed to the CIP letter. And Michaela, comments? Michaela, I just want to thank you before I let you talk for all of these updates you've been sending by email from the FNRP and other meetings that you've been to, that you've sent to the whole commission. Really appreciate that. Okay, back to you.
Kind of back to the recruitment thing. I know Joan did some of this, but reaching out to specific groups, just more active recruitment, I guess, instead of just waiting till people find us. And I'm not an expert on how to do that, but just maybe picking Joan's brain, what she did before, and
yeah,
I don't know, other folks as of how to reach out, even if we may not know somebody, but what groups might be able to point us in the correct direction. Or
exactly. I
anyway,
completely agree.
Would be up for doing that. I don't know.
Yep, and Joan and I have started to talk about that as well, but open to hearing from other people with other connections, other groups. Okay, so the CIP, the SPRCs, I don't, as we've said, things are moving more slowly. I went to a Melwood thing, but I want to thank Majdi, who's agreed to be our Melwood rep. That is another affordable housing, 6-story project in, not the biggest, but it's right smack in a residential neighborhood. It may be controversial, has a lot of stormwater issues, it butts on a park. So that one is starting to move. Mark, I don't know if you have anything else to report on SPRCs. Yeah, okay. Doug and Elizabeth, is there any, well, Elizabeth may still be unable to unmute, but anything from the Energy Committee? And you presented to Arlington Democrats, which was great.
We had a good meeting last week. We talked with Kathy Lynn of the Arlington Public Schools operations side, and also Tanner Prime, who is her subordinate, and they're trying to do what they can to decarbonize the schools. It's not easy. There's a lot of obstacles, but their heart seems to be in the right place, and they're doing what they can under the constraints that they have to operate under.
Yeah, I was able to listen into that, and it was really, really interesting. So thank you for that. Any other updates from anyone? Okay, I think we can adjourn then. Any anything for the good of the order? If not, thank you all very, very much. Appreciate your time and attention and contributions. I think we are getting through our work plan and it is making a difference. So thank you all, and we won't see you in August. On the virtual meeting things, I got your comments. I got a few comments that weren't copied to everyone. I think the only real issue was June or July, and I was on vacation in June and I didn't call in because the meeting started at 1 o'clock in the morning where I was. And if Rob had called in, who's on vacation in July, who said he would call in, I would have been tempted to keep July so that people could call in, but I'm really glad he didn't call in on his vacation. So I think we should do June so that we don't go 3 months without seeing each other. So let's try it for 2025 and we can worry about it the year after. So hopefully that's okay with everybody with the Solomonic 4 meetings between 3 and 5. And we'll try virtual, but I will say This meeting was good, but I miss seeing you all in person, so I'm glad we're not going to do all that many. I think that the county is onto something by not having it be all. This is a microcosm of the greater issues in the world, but not all remote work, but the occasion, some in-person meetings. Michaela, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I just wanted to bring up, Joan had mentioned when I sent out the Barcroft presentation that that C2E2 is not on the briefing list. So I don't know if that's something you'd like to request. Sounds
Yes,
like
we
maybe
would. Yeah,
might
we've already,
doing
Jenna,
that.
I know you and I emailed about that, but I don't know if you've had a chance to think about who in the county or how we could get into the middle of that. Because I do think that we absolutely should be. So I can follow up with Jenna. Because somebody in the county must know how to get in touch with Jair Lynch and get a presentation for us. Sound good?
Yeah, Cindy.
Oh, sorry, Jenna.
No, that's totally fine. That works.
Okay, sounds good. All right. I'll see you all, as the saying goes, see you in September.
All right.
Thank you. Have a
Enjoy
great
the rest
summer.
of the summer, everybody.
Thanks, Cindy.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.